Thank you again, you guys, for coming in today to our call. I really actually enjoy this topic that I am going to discuss today, and a little bit of overtraining versus under recovering. um, I think is such a good thing to be aware of because they are so different, but yet the gap between the two are very small, but yet it's really easy to create a big gap between the two as well. So my hope is during this discussion is you guys just kind of go away with knowing more, have a better understanding of the difference of the two, and then you can take that application and, apply it to your fitness journeys as you move throughout the seasons of what you're training in, or even just the season of your age, because that goes a lot into this conversation as well. So overtraining versus under recovering. I get that question a lot with me. I do a lot of performance athletes on here. So I get a lot of runners and I get a lot of bikers, and finding the balance between recovery and overtraining is kind of hard to do. And you really have to take a look at your personal experiences when you're coaching clients on this, because like I mentioned before, it's easy to kind of intertwine the two. So overtraining to me is more applicable in the ages of 20 and 30. I think it's easier to take the direction of overtraining just because we're in that season where our body can handle just a little bit more stress, a little bit more tension, as far as outside stressors and as far as training stressors. So we can really push the volume in our training, especially if we're more sports specific, or we have a collegiate athlete, or we have someone going into either bodybuilding down to marathon running. Overtraining's more between that age group for me, at least. And then more of the under recovering is pushing more towards like higher end 30s and 40s and beyond age group, just because now we have to find a balance of, okay, my volume might be okay, but I really need to make sure I'm doing X, Y, and Z on my end to counteract and really help with recovery to support my training. So that's kind of breaking it down in those two entities is really what I want to talk about today, and kind of throw out the differences between them. But I'm going to jump down here on my little chart that I have, because I think this has a really good description of it before we dive into it. Um, so like I said, with the definition of overtraining, just too much exercising and volume. I feel like everybody has a personal story, especially when you've been in fitness throughout your life, that you've hit a point where you're like, wow, I'm kind of overtraining. You get a point where you find these little feedback and this symptoms that come into it that we'll talk about, that you're like, I really should probably back off my volume. And that's kind of more what we look at when we look at overtraining. But under recovering is kind of putting more pressure on taking care of yourself. So the recovery inputs, so food, sleep, stress management, like where are you lacking to in those areas to really help support the training that you want to put in for your sport. And so excessive physical training is more of the overtraining side, and adequate fuel, sleep, or stress regulation is more for the under recovery. And if you've been around HF and if you've been in the coaching atmosphere of us, we talk a lot about sleep, about recovery, about stress regulation, because those are the things that support our hormones. Those are things that'll help support our cortisol if we end up going into a little bit more of volume in our training. So then you go into the cortisol impact. So with overtraining, it's more elevated due to constant physical stress. And then the under recovery is more under recovering or elevated from combined physical and lifestyle stress. So you get a combination of the two. And the symptoms are very similar, but yet it's hard because symptoms can also vary from person to person. So each individual client of mine, we can kind of tell with different sleep habits. Irritability is huge. There's different things that can determine whether you're putting too much output into overtraining, or if you're just kind of not taking care of yourself in one way or the other. So overtraining, you can get injury for sure, burnout for sure, and your performance just dips big time. So that's like one of the bigger pieces to me that you can say, all right, my volume's too much in my training. For the under recovering, fatigue, moodiness, irritability, cravings. If you're finding yourself not finding a level of satiety throughout the day, if you're having high cravings between meals, a lot of times it's just we're under recovering. We're not taking care of the entities of fuel, sleep, and stress regulation. So to fix it, we'll go into some things that we can do to kind of counteract some of the, but overtraining, the best thing to do for me is take a week off. Have the clients take a week off. It's super, super simple. And then kind of start micromanaging your volume a little bit. You can still move throughout the day. You can still go to the gym. You can sit in the sauna. You can do the cold plunge. You can do a walk. But the best thing to do is just to deload and take a week off, and then kind of teeter training from there. But for under recovering, we want to address the other things like what do I need to improve upon? Am I not sleeping the way I need to sleep? And do I need to eat a little bit more? Uh, all of those things can kind of filter into that department. But we have, as females, we're just so capable of doing so many things. And we do so many things, whether we're taking care of loved ones, we're taking care of kids, we're working, we're taking care of ourselves. There's so many different entities that we put into ourselves each day. So it's easy to overdo what I call kind of our stress bucket. We have this bucket in the day. I do it all the time. Everything gets thrown into the bucket. Training gets thrown in the bucket. Losing sleep gets thrown in the bucket. Crazy kid schedule gets thrown in there. It's very easy as a female to overdo it on that side of things. So, having a certain season that you're in. So females are complicated also because we don't have solid hormones, right? So our hormones don't just fall in line like a males do. We go through month that spike and come down, and our hormones even fluctuate from day to day, and they'll fluctuate from season to season. So what we could handle in our 20s is not so much what we could handle in our 40s when we look at that bucket being filled. So it's kind of important to think of that as you move through your training as well. Like I said, through the 20s, it's kind of easy that you can kind of dive into more of overtraining and you can kind of sleep a little less. But once you get into your upper 30s and upper 40s, you really have to take a look at, okay, my stimulant right now is my training, but my recovery is my response. So your recovery is where you're going to see a lot of your gains moving through your fitness journey. So you definitely need both to progress. And I don't know if you guys have ever found yourself in a spot where you're putting in the work, you're doing 3 to 4 days of lifting, you're doing a sprinting session, you're doing zone 2, you're watching your calories, you're doing all the things, and you're like, why is my body not responding? Like what is happening? And a lot of times it's easy to skip over the piece of, am I sleeping appropriately? Am I working on my tools in the back pocket to help with stress management? Because those are huge, especially the older that we get. So think about that as you move along. If you've ever heard of the phrase train hard, recover hard, it very much holds true as you go into advanced training and just in general taking care of yourself. So pretty sustainable here for training is as long as you're feeling good is 2 to 3 days of a high intensity session. I would even say if you've been lifting for a while, 4 days of lifting is perfectly fine. And then some low intensity sessions with your mobility, your zone 2, and your walking, but really giving yourself 1 or 2 days off is extremely important when you're feeling good, but it's also extremely important when you're going through some time where family's high stress, where work is high stress. It's more important to put way more pressure on that piece of the journey than, okay, I've got to do another day. I've got to get another lifting session in. And it comes down to kind of trusting that because I've done it. I do it just as bad as anybody else. I've got to get my lifting session in today. but maybe yesterday was just so insane with schedule and kids. I know my body's not going to respond really well to that. So taking that extra 1 or 2 days is extremely important. I feel like too, volume of weightlifting is a big piece of this. I have a lot of clients who get really geeked out with having a lot of volume in their training session. You pull up their lifts and it's like A, B, C, D, E, F, G. You know, they go down the list and they're just really in tune with getting it done, right? So you start your lifting session and you just want to check mark the boxes. And I can't tell you how many times I've taken a piece of training piece and said, you know what? Let's not do this and let's do A, B, and C, and really put a lot of intentional lifting into it. Make sure you're recovering appropriately, not being sloppy, but just really being intentional with your lifting and watching your lifting sessions is just as important as how much you're training. So it goes into like that side of training smarter, not harder piece. So taking a look at volume as you're going through your lifting sessions is just as important as how many days you're getting in the week as well. So good recovery zone. You're probably in a good recovery zone if you wake up feeling rested and motivated. And I know you guys have had those times and those seasons where you're going to sleep, you're waking up, you don't feel good, or you're waking up at that 2 o'clock hour, that 3 o'clock hour, you're feeling really restless. That is a really good sign that volume's a little high and we need to put a little bit more pressure on recovery side of things. So waking up feeling rested and motivated, getting stronger or motivated in your performance. Not every day you're going to feel like a fantastic athlete, and not every day you're going to walk into the gym and kill it. But if you're going into the gym and you're feeling good and you're feeling stronger each week, you're probably in a good spot you have created a good balance between your volume and your recovery. You're not sore. You're not sore or dragging along. And of course, we want energy and mood to feel stable. We do these things, we do training because we want to have energy and we want to feel in good spirits throughout the day. So making sure we have a good balance of that is important too. And then of course your clothes and body composition reflect your efforts. So that goes back into if you've ever just had a moment where you're gone through a couple months and you just stop seeing feedback, it's really good to take a step back and take a look at your training session and take a look at the things that you're doing to have that response to care for your training sessions, and tacking a day off or tacking some volume off and taking another day, more of like a self-care day. I have coaches on HF that are way better at doing that than I am, but I've noticed mid-40s, I just turned 45 last week. It definitely changes a lot the older that you get to have those days that you're just taking care of your mental health more than anything over physical health. Cortisol. I know we've all heard the cortisol conversation. Cortisol gets more important the older that we get. We have to really take a step back and look at a few factors that dictate where that goes. We know that it's our body's main stress response, pretty much. It regulates our blood sugar, inflammation, metabolism, and energy. You seriously can't get on to social media anymore without seeing somebody talk about cortisol, or is it cortisol belly? Is that what people are saying, or cortisol?
Cortisol face.
Yeah, something like that. You'll get on and hear all sorts of thing about it. But I mean, it's a thing. You don't want elevated cortisol all the time. You want to definitely find a way to blunt that. I find that it's tricky too, the older we get with my early morning exercisers, because our cortisol is already spiked pretty high in the morning. We want it to be. That's a good response. But we also want to blunt it and we also want to start filtering it back down. So it's important to kind of pay attention to, what it looks like in your morning routine. There's a lot of I don't want to say political, but there's a lot of discussion around getting food around your training session, especially in the early morning hours. But I really feel strongly if you can give yourself some food in the morning. If you're those early morning risers, I've done it with some of my clients, either just a little bit of a food before, get some recovery mechanism food afterward, really helps, like I said, blunt that cortisol response, which will roll into the rest of your day with satiety and mood. But we want to kind of watch some factors with this because it's really hard to kind of step back and dictate, is this because I'm doing this? But we don't want to chronically elevated. So overtraining is going to chronically elevate your cortisol. Poor sleep is going to chronically elevate your cortisol. If you guys ever gotten poor sleep and gone to the gym and you're like, holy crap, I can't control my heart rate. My heart rate is shooting above. I can't recover. Most of the time, if you take a step back, that's due to really limited sleep the night before or a really high stress situation the day before. Because it will definitely cause that, but it'll also cause trouble sleeping. Like I said earlier, if you're waking up at that 2 to 3 o'clock hour and you're just feel that wired feeling, most likely we've got a little bit of, elevation with cortisol, and taking a few things to take care of yourself will help with that. Constant fatigue is huge. If you're running high cortisol, you'll get constant fatigue, mood swings. Again, the plateau results come in. Cravings and stubborn weight is definitely something that will factor into that as well. So if you're in a deficit and you're not losing fat, it's going to be a good thing to step back and say, am I under recovering? Make sure your volume of your training's in a good spot, but also take a step back and say, am I doing the things that I need to support my training efforts that I'm working in? But this is kind of good. I created this and I don't even know if this makes sense, but we'll go over it. And I have to do this to myself, you guys. I have to take a step back when I'm not seeing what I want out of my training, or if I'm just feeling really fatigued. It's a good thing to look and ask yourself, are my efforts translating into results? Yes, no. Well, how are you feeling? If you're feeling awesome, then great. Things are great. You're moving forward. You're being mindful of your recovery. You're getting, your volume in that you need to. But if you come and you're feeling exhausted, I think the best step to do is just to kind of dial in nutrition, dial in sleep and stress, and kind of micromanage lifestyle and see kind of what's going on with that. And then, of course, if you're not seeing results, but you're feeling awesome, just keep going, right? That's when that consistency piece comes into clutch right here. Is sometimes it just takes a little bit longer for some people than others to really see the results that you want to see. But it's also really good to take a step back and take a look at your day, your week, your month as a whole, and make sure you're really taking your care of yourself with your recovery mechanisms that you have in your tank. So more is not better. We'll always discover that. We'll always put pressure on that. And especially the older you get, I find that getting into the gym, having a really solid basic weight training, putting intent in your lifts, watching your rest, being mindful of your lifting, and then just putting a lot of pressure on your recovery, specifically sleep. Sleep is huge. So if you can, add some better sleep in there, don't change anything, just make sure you're getting into bed at the same time every night, waking up at the same time every morning within reason, paying just a little attention to that, that's probably going to help start flip-flopping things around as well. So not necessarily train harder, but definitely being smarter with your recovery mechanisms is one of the best approach to really kind of keep maintaining. Where'd my cortisol go? Cortisol levels where they need to really help pushing with the results that you want to see in the gym. So definitely under recovering versus overtraining is kind of a slippery slope, but you can tell it's definitely easy to overlap things with your efforts for sure. And then definitely shoot questions over. Do you guys have any questions at all? I can't see where the questions are.
No, there was just one saying that this was timely.
Oh, good. I know, right? Things happen in a timely manner. It's definitely hard to do this because I think for a lot of females, we think, well, what do you mean? Because my training is going to make me feel better, right? So it's not necessarily that we have to say, well, don't do it, don't train, you're training too much, there's too much on your plate. It's more taking care of yourself on the outside of your training that you really want to pay attention to, and I think the most important piece too is you can move outside of working out, right? Like it's hard to wrap your mind around that, but that's why I think the weighted vests are so great. Even that gives you a kind of a high stimulant, but just something as simple as going outside and walking creates the same stimulant mentally for you than it does almost hitting the gym. It's just a different way of doing it. So you kind of have to change your way of thinking. Um, I
Yeah.
definitely hit between the ages 38 to 40, and I could feel it. I could feel it. I wasn't getting the results I was used to. I wasn't feeling the way I could feel normally in the gym. And it just was that time that I had to really start putting a lot of emphasis on, am I recovering appropriately to do the things that I want to do? Right. So, what were you saying, Michaela?
Yeah, just I think daily movement is so good for us, but adjusting the stimulus based on how you're feeling. So maybe it isn't a lifting session. That's okay. Maybe it's just getting outside on a walk, and that's going to give back a lot more for your nervous system support, and not be stressful on your body. So finding ways to continue to do the habit without adding more stress. And sometimes it is just like I don't feel great today. I'm unmotivated, but I'm going to show up because I want that win. And other days it's like, okay, I need to just take a rest day and go to bed early tonight, sleep in a little bit, like get that good sleep, prioritize my meals so that I'm eating and fueling my body because that's going to add a layer of stress I don't want, and get some things in check that are going to benefit you, like Autumn talked about. Eating enough food, getting enough protein, getting enough water, sleep, like those three things are huge. And then maybe it is scaling back or adjusting workouts a little bit right now, or looking at your goals. If your goal is to build muscle, like, okay, let's prioritize those three lifting sessions. And maybe we cut back on any other high intensity work so that we can move towards our goals and do that effectively, but still recover. Like maybe now's not a season to also sign up for a half marathon. So really think through like what is your main goal? Because if you have more than one, they might be contradicting each other and just adding too much stress, physical and mental stress. So I love that.
And it's okay too to say, all right, well, right now I'm not going to do that. But guess what? Maybe this time next year, when X, Y, and Z is a little bit more under control, then maybe I can go in that direction where my body can handle a little bit more stress. So it's okay to flex. It's okay to be flexible with your thinking and your goals, because if you keep that all or nothing, that all in, that's the burnout, right? If you're not allowing yourself to have that flexibility of, okay, that's not working today, I'm going to try this tomorrow, then you kind of have that turn off of like, oh, I'm not going to do it at all, right? So it's important to keep that in the back of your mind, and always talk to your coach, or always reach out if you feel that burnout and you feel, any of these fatigues, and sleep is off, and which we talk a lot about, and kind of troubleshoot and see what we can do as far as adding more food. Something as simple as adding more food around your training session could completely counteract how you're feeling throughout the rest of the day. So um you don't have to feel like crap. You don't have to spend 5 days in the gym. It's you can see a lot of results and a lot of good mentally and physically by just working with a really good balance, but and not creating such a huge gap between overtraining and under recovering. And just kind of being mindful of things as you go throughout your journey, because it will change. It'll change in your 20s, it'll change in your 30s, it'll change, and it's supposed to. We're not supposed to stay the same as we were when we were in our 20s, so we're not supposed to train the same, right? We're not supposed to take care of ourselves the same. There's got to be different outlets. So definitely very interesting, and it's good to step back and assess how you feel and the things that you can change with that.
Yeah. It's very possible to build muscle lifting 3 days a week too. Like it doesn't need
Yes.
6 days a week. More
No.
is always better. So keeping that in mind too. The more rest you have, the more you're able to give when you do train. So
Yeah.
there's more to,
Re-
yeah.
recover hard. Recover hard.
Yes. Thank you for joining everyone. Thank you, Autumn. Hope
You
everyone has
bet.
a great week. We'll talk to you soon.